mute button as well. If you want to turn your camera on, you can. And if we ask questions at the end of the webinar and you turn your camera on, just be mindful that it is being recorded and it will go up on the ACT NRM YouTube. So John. Okay, thanks, John. Nobody. You've got you can hear us and see us, but your camera's not working. That's fantastic. Thank you, John. All right, so ACT NRM, we've sort of working with the Future Drought Fund through the Farm Business Resilience Program, and earlier on this year, I made contact with Sarah and she came and did a presentation at the ACT Farmer Forum on the My Climate View tool, which garnered a lot of interest. So we did decide to follow up with a webinar where we could sort of access more people across the ACT and the New South Wales. So thank you, Sarah, for coming along and agreeing to give us a presentation. Before I hand over to Sarah, obviously, there's the few people and funding bodies I should acknowledge, but most importantly, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the ACT and the region, their continuing connection to country and community. I pay my respect to them and their culture, and to the elders, past, present and future. We're all very blessed to be working on this amazing country that we live in, and the land, and trying to leave it in a better condition to perhaps when we found it. But and also the funding body, which is the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund Farm Business Resilience Program, which some of you might know we've been running for a good 18 months now, and we've got lots of training programs, and within those training programs we offer hear from you guys out there on what sort of topics of interest you might like a webinar or a workshop. And most people online have my details, so you can always give me a buzz and let me know what you are interested in. Otherwise, we can leave our details at the end of the presentation and on our feedback survey. Right, so of course the general housekeeping, try to keep your microphone on mute. If you've got some questions throughout the presentation, Sarah's happy to answer those as she goes. So options are to sort of turn your camera on and ask a question. You can raise your hand using the raise hand on your toolbar, or just unmute your microphone and just ask the question. And also Mary Bonnet is in the room with me, and she's going to be monitoring the chat function. Again, always just use that if you want to pop any information in there, like John has already done for us. And that is all the dot points and reminders I had. Mary, unless you can think of anything else, the recording has started. But you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to Sarah. So Sarah, if you're good to go, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for the introduction. I'm just going to share my screen now. Can everybody see that? Jenny, can you answer on their behalf?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And before I start, I'd also like to echo Jenny's sentiments and acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting today, and recognise any others who may also have a connection to the lands of the ACT and our surrounding regions. I acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the immeasurable contribution they make to the life of the city in this region. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be attending today's event. So my name's Sarah Clarry. I work for Farmlink, and I'm involved in the Climate Services for Agriculture project with the Bureau of Meteorology and CSIRO. So if you're not familiar with it, Climate Services for Agriculture is a Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries investment through the Future Drought Fund. As mentioned, it's a Bureau of Meteorology and CSIRO project. Farmlink is involved as a third partner, and we have been facilitating the agencies, the two agencies' involvement with the ag sector. So I guess we're here for our agricultural networks, and so CSA is a suite of tools and data designed to provide the ag sector with better climate information. And some of the outputs of this project include Map Explorer, direct API access for sort of data hungry users, and the flagship program, which is My Climate View, or product, I suppose. My PowerPoint hasn't, here we go. So My Climate View is a free digital product that helps farmers, advisors and land managers understand what the future climate might look like for their location and the particular commodity they're growing. So it's publicly available. There's no need to register. You can just access the website. It contains historical data for the past 60 years and projections into the future. And it's tailored around, I guess what's unique about it is it's tailored around commodities. So currently there are 20 commodities on the platform. There's going to be a new release of the platform this month, which will incorporate another 2 commodities. So we're now into the 3rd year of a 3-year project. The early stages involved a lot of consultation with, departments of primary industry, NRM groups, farmers, and so on, to come up with an initial prototype. We did hundreds and hundreds of interviews, particularly with farmers and advisors, to try to understand what their climate information needs were, and particularly around specific commodities. So whereas what you'll see on the Bureau website and a number of other climate apps is sort of general climate information, what you'll notice with this is that you can search for things that are specific to you as a grain grower or a beef producer or an apple, an orchardist or whatever. So in July of this year, I guess 2022 was a lot of this engagement, and into 2023 we're sort of moving now into more of an adoption and awareness phase. In July of this year, what was previously we used to call the product Climate Services for Agriculture as well, that has been redesigned and relaunched as My Climate View to sort of differentiate that from the parent project. And there was a bit of an overhaul to the look and feel of the site as well. So what's unique about My Climate View is the user-centred design. What I mean by this is that multiple disciplines have contributed towards this design. So we have our climate and agricultural science researchers and so on, they're the people providing the data and the science that underpins the project. We've got the customer engagement team, of which I am part, and some Indigenous engagement team members. And as I mentioned today, we've spoken to hundreds of end users, which include farmers, advisors, land managers, agriculture and NRM sector organisations, as well as stakeholders from the broader community that intersects with agriculture. So banks, rural financial counsellors and so forth. And then we also have a social science team that's providing theory and analysis to guide our engagement and extension approach. I won't stay too long on this page, but this will just give you an idea of some of the feedback that we've been receiving to date from a range of end users, including NRM groups, primary producers, peak industry bodies and so forth. This is an example of how we're working with some other Future Drought Fund projects. So it's illustrating the way in which Climate Services for Agriculture and My Climate View is working with other FDF programs to amplify the value of both programs. So GrowCom is the peak body for Queensland's fruit, vegetable and nut growers, and their job is to do training opportunities, industry updates, events and so forth. And we went along to a series of workshops with them in March of this year to help farmers produce their farm business resilience plans and to incorporate the information that they could get from My Climate View into their farm business resilience plans that they could then go and present to banks and so forth. So that's just one example of how we're working with other organisations. Another example of that is some work that we're doing with Queensland Rail. So obviously Queensland Rail has nothing to do with the agriculture industry, but they have found that My Climate View gives them information that they're not able to find elsewhere. So one of the things that will impact railway lines is heat waves, and on the banana, under the banana commodity on there, you can see incidences of 3 or more days over a particular temperature threshold, which is in this case 37 degrees. You'll see when I show you the platform that you can actually adjust those thresholds. But for them, they were able to, that sort of has impacts on their rail network. So they have said to us that this is, this is something that's useful to them. I mentioned before we have Indigenous engagement team members, and so currently we've only been doing this work across Northern Australia, probably just because of resourcing more than anything else, but we've engaged with, I think that's up to about 80 organisations now, and yeah, and that's been really positive in terms of their comments about how the data that they're seeing on that is sort of ground truthing what they're experiencing on country. So I'll show you now the platform. And I thought I might give the audience the opportunity to nominate a location that we can have a look at today that's going to be relevant to you. So if anyone listening would like to nominate somewhere, I'm happy to plug that in and we can have a look at what's happening in that region. So any suggestions? Jenny, did you want to nominate somewhere?
There we go. Someone says Lagan, Laggan, New South Wales.
Okay.
Thanks, Tammy.
So this is the home page, and before I go any further, you'll see that there's an about section here. There's a section on data where you can do a bit of a deep dive into where we get the data, and that it's all Bureau of Meteorology data, but you can find some more information in here. And then under the help, there's also a selection of FAQs, which are quite detailed and should address most of the questions that you might have about the terminology and so forth. So when you get to this homepage, you can either type in a town or a locality like this. You can type in a physical address, so your actual farm address, if you'd like to do that, or you can just pull and drag this pin around to wherever you want it to be. So there's a few options. You've also got this commodity option under here. So when you look around Australia, depending on where you are, this list of commodities is going to change. So if you're up in Hughenden in Queensland, for example, you're not going to see this selection of commodities. You'd be more likely to see beef, mangoes, and more tropically relevant commodities. And so you can have a look at just general climate information, or you can go down and select one of these. But we might just start with general to give you an idea of what the site has. And you can also change those locations and commodities on this page here. So when you get to this first page, you have a drop-down menu of climate factors here. So we'll first take a look at the annual rainfall for Lagan, and the purple boxes here represent the historical, the past 30 years which is here, compared to the 30 years previously. If you roll your mouse over each of these, you can see the actual annual rainfall totals for that particular year. And these top and bottom dotted lines represent the 10th and 90th percentiles, and the solid line through the middle is the average of those 30-year periods. So you can see that in Lagan there's been a slight decline in the annual rainfall here, but and there's also looks like there's been a bit of an increase in the inter-year variability of the rainfall. So you'll see that My Climate View doesn't, it's not a predictive tool in terms of what's going to happen this year, but what it is trying to show you is what the trends are. And these green boxes here are the future projections, which are based off an aggregate of 8 global models. from agencies like the Bureau of Meteorology and their counterparts overseas. So you'll see there's been a bit of a decline in annual rainfall, but you might be interested to know then, well, is that happening more in one season than another? So you can then have a look at this by season. So you can see that, yes, in fact, the autumn rainfall has been quite a marked decline, whereas you might find that some of the other seasons, such as summer, you've actually had a bit of an increase. So if you're if your crop is dependent on rainfall at a particular time of year, or your enterprise is dependent on that, you can have a look at this information to see what that might mean as you're heading into the future. So in terms of climate factors, obviously we've also got average maximum and minimum temperatures. So you can see here that there's been a 0.7 degree increase in the average temperature in the past 30 years compared to the period 1963 to 1992. And the future projections are showing that that is projected to increase into the future. These images are downloadable, so if you did want to use this in terms of supporting a funding application or something like that, you can do that. Download any of the images of any of these climate factors. You can look at minimum temperatures as well, hot days. So hot days here are defined as days with a maximum temperature greater than or equal to 35 degrees. And if you said, all right, well, I would like to see, I would like to define a hot day as lower or higher than that. You can do that. You can modify it up or down and save that. And once you've done that, you'll see that you get this little green modified button there that tells you that you've changed that value from the default. So days above 33 degrees, you can see have increased as well. And then if you wanted to change that back to reset it to the default, you can do so that way. And then we also have evapotranspiration under the general climate factors. So, but I guess what's more interesting is the commodity-specific information. So we've come by this information by talking to growers and producers about what the key challenges are in a season or a year, what sorts of things are going to impact their yields. And so if we look at, Jenny, do you have a particular commodity, or does Tammy have a particular commodity that she'd like to look at for this?
Yeah, sheep. I was going to say the same thing. Sheep will be good. Sheep.
So once you select that, you'll see that under the climate factors that you get different factors here, and this is what sheep producers have told us that they're interested in. So you've still got the rainfall and the temperatures, but then we also look at things like heat exposure at joining. So and once again, you can modify these dates. So we have looked at joining between January and June, but you can change those. And these are days, again, greater than or equal to 35 degrees between those two dates. So it's also got cold exposure at lambing. So I guess you can see with the increasing temperatures, that's going to become less of a risk for sheep producers. And then we also have data around for heat waves. So no heat waves as defined by 3 or more consecutive days above 30 degrees in this region. However, there is projected to be, well, one somewhere in between there into the future. So you can modify that, modify that down if you wanted to. I'll just show you a horticultural crop as well to just give you an idea of what the different climate factors are for the different commodities. So apple growers.
Just a quick question, Sarah.
Yeah.
While you're changing to a different commodity there, question from the audience is: can you run the modelling without defining, like choosing a commodity?
What sort of things would you like to look at?
Kath, maybe are you sort of thinking temperatures, rainfall? Here we go. Hold on, question coming. Sarah, you might be able to see this coming up, or do you want me to read it?
Oh, could you read it? Yeah, I've just
Yeah, no, that's all good. Yep.
You can turn the microphone on if that's easier. So
yeah. Temperature and rainfall, but not stock or agriculture specific.
Yeah, so I guess your general climate information will give you that. So that's not specific to a particular commodity. I guess it's important to understand that even if you are looking at a commodity, it's really what we're looking at here is just rainfall. It's still just bureau data around rainfall. It's just that we've attached it to the sheep commodity because that's what sheep producers have told us that they want to see, if that makes sense. So we've got this, I guess, an intersection of climate data and the kinds of things that producers are interested in, and we've put those together to come up with these commodity-specific climate factors. But it is all just bureau data. And if you are interested in APIs, then we can talk about. They're not publicly available, but they will be made available to people if you want to get in touch with us and you want to access the data that way. Does that answer your question?
I think so. We can always come back at the end if you like.
Yep. So yeah, I'll just quickly skip over a couple of the, the horticultural commodities. So you can see here, something like apples. Apple growers have told us that they need a certain number of chill portions, and so we've drawn up some algorithms to work that out for them. Frost at flowering and sunburn, fruit sunburn. And which reminds me, the other way that you might want to think about using this is in terms of supporting grant applications. So we had a citrus orchard in WA who also have sunburn as a concern for them in their fruit production, and they saw the potential for being able to download this data, and they had netted a quarter of their orchard and found that they had good results in terms of improved water use efficiency, less wind damage and less sunburn on the fruit. So they could see the potential for using this information to attach to a grant application to say, well, we want to net the remaining 3/4 of our orchard. It's going to cost this much money, but this is what we see is going to happen in the future, and that's why we can make the business case for doing that. So, and then, so different things. Wheat, you have growing season rainfall. I'm not sure if wheat is actually a commodity in this location, but I'm just showing you this in terms of seeing what different things you can see. They've got soil moisture at sowing. So all different climate factors depending on what commodity you're looking at. The other feature that we have is a seasonal forecast on here. So this is probably the only shorter term climate factor that we have on the site. And this gives you both a seasonal or a monthly view of what rainfall you can expect in your location over the coming month or 3 months. So seasonal refers to the next 3 months. This is updated weekly. So this was last issued on the 9th of November. Almost weekly, every 10 days, I think might be more accurate. And so you can see that in Lagan, you've got a 75% chance of receiving at least 127 mils over the next 3 months, 50% chance of 183, and a low chance of 25% chance of 261 mils. You'll also see on this page there's a star rating here, and what that refers to is the Bureau's confidence, I guess, in the forecast. So in this location at this time of year, there's been moderate past accuracy. So sometimes, in the same location, you might see 3 stars at a different time of year when the rainfall's a little bit more reliable, and other times you might see less. So this graph down here is really just what you're seeing up here represented in a graphical format. And then we've also got a couple of data points here in terms of what the median rainfall is for this location for the December to February period, what you received in this location in the same period last year, and what you've had over the past 3 months, so August to October. There's a give feedback button up on the top right-hand corner of every page on the site, and that will come straight through to our team. So if you have any, if you do have any comments or questions, you can always just click on there, and you have the option of leaving, you can just leave anonymous feedback, or you can give us your details and we can get back to you if you have any particular questions. So just head back to the presentation now. So I thought it might be useful to just talk through a couple of the case studies, I guess, that will illustrate how we're using, or how farmers are using My Climate View. So this was a cherry farmer in near Gabby in WA, which is sort of on the coastal side of the northern wheat belt. The farmer is a mixed horticulturalist that came to our session because he was tossing up whether he should remain growing cherries or not. So this location annually has received around a 100 millilitre drop in rainfall over the past 60 years. But like we saw before, a lot of that that decrease is happening in the autumn and winter months. So, and there's also quite a lot of seasonal variation. So in the 3 most recent years, this producer had experienced high rainfall during fruit set, and all the cherries had split, and he said it wasn't worth picking them. So being a mixed farmer had some leeway, so it wasn't really an all or nothing decision. He was thinking of pulling out the cherries and trying something else, but didn't want to give up on them when they're about to come good. So looking at the projections, you can see that the range in the historical data is fairly similar to what's been experienced in the previous decades. However, even the average range is quite broad. So depending on his risk appetite, there could be some significant highs or lows for him to deal with. Similarly, the spring rainfall overall is trending down. So if it's a new crop, which is likely to have a 20 or 30 year lifespan, he may want to determine whether the rainfall is going to be sufficient that far into the future. And we've just seen a really quite dramatic example of that down in Narrandera in the Riverina, where the parent company of Ferrero Rocher bought a property down there in 2013. They have planted over 5 years, from 2013 to 2018, 1 million hazelnut trees. And they have this year decided to sell that property and rip the hazelnut trees out because the climate into the future is not going to support the growing of hazelnuts there. So that was an extremely expensive exercise. So I guess, the lesson is that this tool can provide you with some clues in terms of, the viability of an enterprise going forward, whether you might want to consider diversifying or, somehow, or even taking advantage of what you're seeing there. So not every area in Australia is going to experience decreases in rainfall. So there might be places where, people can take up some new opportunities. So this scenario was a generational sheep farmer in South Australia who wanted a quote unquote brutally realistic view of the value of his farm as an asset to his future generations. So he'd recently taken full control of the farm and had a young family, so was looking at it as a really long-term decision and a very personal decision. So should they devote their lives to the farm and continue to develop it, knowing that it means they might live remotely, have to send their kids to boarding school, etc., in the hopes of passing on a profitable farm in good condition? Or will the climate change to a point where they are passing on a management challenge that they're not equipped for? So fertility heat risk was what we're showing here as some of the data from the sheep section. And keeping in mind that the thresholds and timings can be edited. If you have a look at the historical graph, Port Augusta receives an average of 39 days where the maximum temperature is more than 32 degrees and is therefore considered a risk to ewe and ram fertility between January and June. So in 2070, that's likely to be 55 days, or about 2.5 months out of a 6-month period. Now, obviously, as a sheep producer, you might choose to join at a different time of year. So it doesn't mean that, that you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but these are, I guess it's information designed to help you make a more informed decision. So in terms of what's next, this month we will be relaunching, or not relaunching, a new release will come out, which, as I mentioned, will have another couple of commodities included, but there'll also be a bit of a change to the way the information is presented in terms of you'll be able to see a future climate summary. So this will have all the same data, but a little bit more in terms of a narrative around what it means, and just a bit of a change to the look and feel of the platform. So there's a QR code here that will allow you to access the platform, which I'll leave up on the screen. That you can, it'll take you straight there, or else the URL is also up on the screen there. Would like to acknowledge the Future Drought Fund as the funder of this project, and as mentioned, it's a collab between CSIRO and Bureau of Meteorology. So thanks for your time, and I will be happy to take any questions now.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And we'll make sure that your links and all the other bits and pieces will be either in the chat box here or in our follow-up emails. And lots of information, and I think for me it's one of those tools that I think I could sit there for half a day and just play with and discover, and that's fantastic. And a lot of the it just seems to be quite user friendly, and I guess you guys have tried to set it up that way. Interesting that the Port Augusta family was using the information to farm are they leaving for their succession planning, the next generation. I hadn't really actually thought of that. So that's great. And the story with the Ferrero Rocher property, that's just, that's a tragedy, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And possibly had this been available, 10 years earlier, it might have been, a different decision that they made about choosing that region for hazelnuts. So.
And there's a question just in the chat box there, and it's about, the forecasts for into the future are quite long periods. And was there any thought or efforts into looking at like the emissions that Australia and the world are sort of going to be making, and was that taken into account?
Yes, and I should have mentioned that. I might just quickly share my screen again and show you. So if we go back here, these projections you can see here are under 2 different emission scenarios. So if we go back to looking at, say, sheep, and say, let's have a look at autumn temperatures, for example. You can have a look at both a medium emissions or a high emissions scenario. So, and there's a little information box here about what that is. So, the medium emission scenario is if they are reduced substantially by the end of the century, but not enough to stop continued warming. And the high emissions is, rapid increases. So where we're tracking is probably somewhere in between these two scenarios. So that's really just, you may not notice too much of a difference in terms of this particular climate factor, but you might find when you have a look at some of the others that you'll see a bit of a difference depending on whether you toggle between one of those. So yes, that was definitely taken into account. Sorry, I didn't mention that earlier.
No, that's okay. That's great. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions, if you want to turn on your camera or unmute yourself, now's your chance to have your say, or pop it in the chat on the side. Send it through and we can answer that one for you.
I think someone's typing something.
Yep. I think thank you. Fantastic. Thanks, Tammy. Sounds like we've helped answer those questions. I know here in the ACT we've got a couple of landowners that have sort of looked into it and they've had a bit of a play with the tool. One of those landowners is online today. Not sure if he wants to unmute or turn his camera on, but it is fantastic to sort of see it out there, and the way that you guys have sort of made sure that you've incorporated all the views from the producers and all the stakeholders, and it really is a collaborative approach and a tool that's there for everybody. So well done to everyone in the teams.
Thanks. And I should mention too that we are, if anyone would like us to demo that to a producer group or a grower group or your organisation, we can do something similar to this. I can do a brief one where we just look at the tool itself, or I can do, a bit more about the background of the tool. But we've also got train the trainer sessions as well. So, and that's one of the things that we're doing with GrowCom in Queensland, is just training them up so that they can then deliver this within their farm business resilience workshops. So we're not, having to travel to Queensland, each time or to deliver these sorts of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Just Peter, the landowner in the ACT, who has been using the tool. They've been using the high emission scenario, I guess because they've got little confidence in the medium scenario. Thanks, Peter. And they've actually have provided feedback and made some suggestions on expanding the evapotranspiration data. Transpiration data. Yeah, so Pete's been fantastic in all the sorts of apps and utilising everything that's out there and creating his own. So thanks, Peter, for your feedback and providing information to this group as well. So Mary's just, if anyone is able to access the chat box, Mary's just put in a link to our short survey. You don't have to do it right now, but if you could fill out that survey for us, that would be great. And in the survey, there's space for you to leave comments and your name and your contact details. If you do want Sarah to get in contact with you, if you want some further webinars or like what Sarah was sort of offering, there's options there for more information for your local land care group or your producer group or whatever your stakeholders might be. So if there's some more questions, please put them in, send them through, yell out. But other than that, I think we might wrap it up, Sarah, unless you've got anything else you want to add.
No, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming along today and listening in. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for your time and everyone who's been online. Oh, hang on. And my IT expert, Mary Bonnet, in the room here as well. Thank you. We will send out the recording and a follow-up email with a few links, and also the link to the survey again if you don't access it through the chat box. But I really appreciate your time today. We've given you a little early mark so you can go off and get back in the paddock and do what you got to do out there.
Or have a
the gift of time.
Or have a play on my climate view. Yeah, but no,
I'd love to hear your feedback. So
yeah, exactly, that's right. Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. And yeah, thanks, Sarah, and we'll all see you again at the next Future Drought Farm Business Resilience webinar. Have a nice weekend.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jenny. Thanks for having us.
Bye. Bye.